So in this time that we have together, we want to maybe scratch the surface a little, all right? We want to take some time to consider how slowing down can yield more quality decision making.
Today, we're here to talk about the leadership superpower of slowing down. As Dawn mentioned, this really emerged. It wasn't a part of the curriculum or the content of Evolve. It was something that emerged from the participants. It was a theme that very different leaders doing very different things were bringing up about how useful this was. And I don't think that's a surprise since we're inundated with so many things coming at us. And we really want to frame this around, particularly, you can think about it leading in any aspect, particularly around leading for equity. Um, where so many times we can be reactive when people provide us criticism or constructive feedback, or where we feel hurt or harmed. Fighting that sense of urgency, which sometimes is about us, sometimes it's about the very real circumstances that we're facing, and sometimes it's manufactured urgency, right? It's created and manufactured. And sort of sidestepping that can be a radical way to be and to lead. And it can connect us with our agency out of being disempowered. And I have to respond to all of these things right here, right now, in this immediate moment. And just say, I'm just going to take a moment or 10 minutes or a day or a week, right? And slowing down can mean different things in different contexts. And so this really emerged from our Evolve cohort of leaders. And now it is part of the content and is part of the curriculum. And so we're excited to share it with you. It's not going slow to be stuck in endless deliberation or going slow to avoid tough decisions or to procrastinate or postpone taking an action out of fear that it might go well or perfectionism or just taking more time to take more time. This is about intentional slowing down and pausing so we can be better, more present, more clear, more effective, and maybe even faster, right? It might help us. So I love that phrasing of going slow to go fast. A couple of things that this does for us when we can slow down our thinking, slow down our bodies and our biology, our heart rate, our pulse, our breathing. When we can slow down a process, we can slow down a conversation. Um, it helps us connect with ourselves and our self-awareness. Like, oh, my heart is racing. My armpits are sweaty. I'm feeling defensive. Okay. That's good for me to notice because when I notice, I can better manage it. When I don't notice, it's kind of managing me. It can help us manage our emotions and be more responsive. I'm feeling very attacked right now and feeling defensive. Okay, maybe I need to connect with this. And this person's trying to help me be the leader I want to be. It can also help us reflect, process, and think, maybe more clearly, maybe just help us think at all. It can also help us strengthen relationships. Slowing down might be just help me connect with Brian and really listen, not just to the words, but everything he's communicating with how he's being and the context and nonverbals and tone and everything I know about Brian, right? But I have to slow down to connect with those things. It can strengthen our trust. Um, it can give us clarity around what maybe the problem is, what the resistance is in us and the other person or in the context we're in, right? I maybe think people are just resistant because they're obstinate when really they're troubled by the overwhelm they're experiencing. That's a different thing for me to engage with as a leader. It might help me slow down, and I might help the team slow down to think about different solutions, different possibilities, to be more innovative, to be more creative, to think outside of the typical tools we have to think about some different possibilities. I also think it helps us slow down to be more proactive and not just in that reactive space. I love the quote from the Dalai Lama and Archbishop Bishop Desmond Tutu from their wonderful book, the Book of Joy, that says, a sacred pause helps us move from reactivity to choosing our response. And I think that sacred pause and that slowing down can mean lots of different things in lots of different contexts, but really helps us move out of reactivity into choosing a response that's aligned with our values, the best version of ourselves, who we aspire to be, and help us do that. I know Don's been digging into the research around slowing down. So tell us super nerds more, Don. I can't
All
wait.
right. All right. So every time we do these webinars, my favorite part is actually doing the background prep and research for it, right? I went down this fantastic rabbit hole just to see what's out there, right? And what's really fascinating, and I just want to be super clear, right, is that Brian, Keith, and I are not saying that one is better than the other, all right? Like quick decision making, or what we refer to as intuitive decision making, is worse than, or not, we're not assigning any value judgment, in comparison to slow or deliberative decision making, because research shows over and over that both are needed, right? And research also shows us that intuitive decision making works really well for us when we're doing repetitive, familiar tasks, right? Because they're based on mental models that have formed over time. So quick decision making doesn't require much thought. However, when we look more closely at more complex decision making, this is where the slowing down gets super interesting, right? A lot of people have read Daniel Kahneman's best-selling book, 2011 book, Thinking Fast and Slow. I've seen it on many, many people's bookshelves, right? It's a great book, right? So Kahneman, in his research, warns that fast thinking, even though it might seem efficient, can often be full of biases and flawed thinking. Okay. And when we go too fast and we don't take that sacred pause that Keith is talking about, right? Sometimes we can miss those pieces, especially with decision making that is fast but is not grounded in any kind of theoretical, critical, or kind of framework, kind of basis, right? And so that, when I was reading that got me thinking a little bit more about decision making in terms of, well, what does it actually mean to have, to be more intentional and to slow down with decision making? Another book that people cite over and over again is Chip and Dan Heath's 2013 book, Decisive: How to Make Better Choices in Life and Work. I almost got really, really far down the rabbit hole with this book, right? And they offer more thoughts on effective decision making. They encourage us to think about the importance of widening your options to avoid bias in decision making, because as human beings, our tendency is to get quickly locked into one path, right? One way of doing things, because we recognize the patterns, the situations, and so on, or we think we do, right? So, but while we're thinking about this, right, this can actually, again, work against us. But you're saying, you know what, Don, if I take too much time, that's like a slippery slope, because that's what gets me into analysis paralysis. So the Heath brothers actually share with us that their research says that people who considered even one additional alternative, did 6 times better in terms of decision making, 6 times better than those who considered only a single option. When I saw that and I read that, and I'm like, oh yeah, the research is there. It's really interesting, right? Like that, that gave me a lot more to think about. But what does this look like? How do we slow down decision making in the moment so that we can create more self-awareness? I think Brian has some things to share with us.
Absolutely. Thanks, Don. Yeah. Because we've got lots of great reasons, right? We've got so much clarity about the benefit, right, of slowing down from what Keith and Don have shared. And let's talk about how to actually do that, right? Because it is a little challenging, maybe a lot challenging, right? And when I train facilitators on the Brave Space framework, we talk about the importance of self-awareness and self-management as a facilitator, right? That's really, really important. And one of the things I offer during this portion of my training workshop is a quick and easy to remember phrase for slowing down in the moment in order to maintain effectiveness as a facilitator. And I think that this is actually useful in this context as well, right? As we're talking about just broadly slowing down, right? And the phrase is take a breath, take a beat, take a break, right? And so let's break down a little bit, like what does that mean? What does that look like to think about these three things, right? So take a beat. Let's start there, right? So you give yourself time to actually reflect on something before you react, right? Now, what can it look like to take a beat? I mean, sometimes you're counting, right? Maybe you're going to count to 5. Maybe you're going to count to 10, right? Maybe you're going to use a little bit of a filler phrase here, right? You might say something like, interesting, right? And then see if something else happens, right? See if somebody else steps in to say something more, right? Or to share additional information, offer some context, right? So those are some things you can do to take a beat. Now, when I say take a breath, I mean literally take a breath, right? Take a deep, conscious breath. All kinds of research that tells us that the act of taking a deep, conscious breath leads to lots of really good outcomes in terms of us being able to self-regulate our emotions, right? So you might take several deep conscious breaths, right? You might do some box breathing, right? And box breathing is when you breathe in on a particular count, you hold it for that same count, you breathe out for a count, and you hold the exhale as well for another count, right? So there's lots of different options for that. I also like to recommend folks using some techniques from positive intelligence or PQ. These are like little mini mindfulness practices that engage your senses and help to reconnect you to your body. And these are things you can do like in the middle of a meeting, right? In the middle of a conversation with somebody. So things as simple as like looking out the window if there is a window, right? And seeing like what's out there. Like, is there a tree out there? Can I pay attention to the leaves on that tree? Even for a couple of moments, right? If you're tactile, right? Feeling textures, like maybe you're feeling the texture of your clothing, right? Or maybe one of the exercises is even to see, like, just rub your fingertips together and see if you can perceive the feeling of your fingerprint ridges, right? But those kinds of things help you again to get back into your body. If sound works for you, right? Like listening for distant sounds, seeing what's the furthest away sound I can hear, what's the most subtle sound that I can perceive in this moment. These are all really useful ways, again, to give yourself the space when you're taking the breath, right? As another way, right, of getting embodied. I actually just coached somebody yesterday who, for whom smell actually was the sense that works best for them, and so worked with them to identify like what smells can you detect in your environment right now, right? And that was really helpful for them in order to slow down and to get fully present in our work. And then the final piece there is take a break, right? Give yourself the space, right? Because sometimes it's not enough to take a beat and to take a breath, right? You might need more time and space than that allows you. So consider, right? Don't respond to the text until after the meeting, right? Give yourself a moment. Don't respond to the email until tomorrow, right? Consider, I think some of the best inventions in the world in my working life are the snooze and scheduling features on email, right? To say like, I don't need to look at this email again until tomorrow, or I'm going to write this email, but I'm actually not going to send it until I've had a good night's sleep and I can take a look at it with fresh eyes, right? So really kind of lean into those opportunities and tools that are available to you. Sleeping on it, right, is really helpful. Like sometimes, again, I find, right, the way that I might write an email or the way that I might think about responding to something in the moment is quite different the next day when I've had an opportunity to just sleep, right, and think on it. And also consider, like, you can schedule a time to have or revisit a conversation, at a time when you and or the other person or people who are involved might be in a better place to do that, right? I mean, we often have a preference for we have to resolve this right here, right now in the moment. And often that's actually not true, right? So if we give ourselves space to say, what's more important than talking about it right here, right now in the moment is us having a really good conversation about it. And if I know that can happen It's more likely to happen if we give ourselves some time and space. Let's do that, right? And that outcome might actually be considerably better, right, than the fast movement.
So I think we're all team slowing down now. All right. And we all have some great tips that Brian's offered us in terms of taking a beat, taking a breath, taking a break, right? And so what I wanted to do is just say to you, this is the kind of work that Brian, Keith, and I want to do with you. This webinar emerged from what Evolve participants and some of our clients told us they needed, right? We wanted to work with them to help them release fear, to gain courage, and to take transformative action, right? And just as we did with all of our past participants, we too want to see you be confident, be courageous, and be resilient. More specifically, I also want you to think about if Evolve as an experience is well suited for you.